would talk you through how the Convention on the Rights of the Child is related to the work of UNODC, and I give you some of the examples of the work that we do that is contributing to that. So I am part of the civil society unit at the UN Office on Drugs and Crime in Vienna, basically your counterpart at the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. So therefore I'm very happy to see many of you that we have worked with and we still continue to work with, which we really consider to be important partners for UNODC. So, violence against children. We know...
By the way, just yesterday, we reached the milestone of 8 billion world population just yesterday. And young people makes up a very important part of that. Already, at least if you look at the count, 14
to 24, 15 to 24, depending on how you count, they account to about 1.2 billion.
So 16% of the world population are young people. It makes sense to be discussing this, but especially to be discussing why this today. So, violence, we know that violence against children affects more than
1 billion of children all over the world. And 1 in 3 victims, according to research and studies, of human trafficking are children. It takes place in families, schools, alternative care and justice institutions, the community, or even within the workplace environments. It is an issue every country of the world struggles with. It cuts across cultures, classes, ethnic and religious spaces. Often, violence against children remains invisible, and this is one of the challenges I think that we face, that we can discuss in a different forum. It remains invisible. It is also unrecorded quite often, and unprosecuted, and this is the responsibility of a state. It is also unpunished, either by the state or also the community as well.
And it is implicit within the society, and it's also not condoned many times. So it takes many forms that intersect within drugs, organized crime, including child sexual abuse and exploitation, child trafficking, child labor, exploitation, and slavery, as well as children recruitment and exploitation by criminal groups, including terrorists and violent extremist groups.
Children and crime, one aspect of that is that children is a forced engagement in organized crime. So the forced engagement of organized crime of children is one aspect of the challenges that we face. So children are particularly vulnerable in becoming victims of organized crime and to be involved in crimes themselves. And there are many reasons for that, and many colleagues and speakers talked about that this morning. These include the exploitation of children by gangs and organized criminal groups. For example, in the illicit drug market, criminals often use difficult or violent-ridden family backgrounds to create a sense of belonging for children. So it's also about the search of the belonging that children usually are lacking within the communities that actually makes them vulnerable within the communities and to the organized criminal groups. Worldwide, however, reliable estimates on the youth-drug crime relationship are not available sufficiently. There's also a socio-economic hardship and structural difficulties that we face in addressing this issue, such as weak labor markets and weak formal or informal, particularly economies, particularly affect young people. In particular, high youth unemployment rates are a key driver to illicit activities among young people. And within the justice system, and this is at the government level, children are exposed to heightened vulnerability. The majority of children, we know that in detention, either suffer from substance abuse disorders or have committed drug-related offenses. So for example, young people use more drugs than adults. I think we heard this also already this morning, and have higher levels of use than past generations. So if you look at Africa, for example, the studies show that the number of drug users in Africa is projected to rise in the next decade by about 40%. And this also reflects the rise of the population in Africa itself as a young continent. The vulnerability, that also creates more vulnerability for the young communities within that particular continent.
Explaining the convention itself. When you look at that, how does it compare or does it relate to the work of UNODC? The mandate of the Convention of the Rights of the Child and the conventions UNODC is a guardian to clearly intersect in many different ways. For instance, Article 2 of the Convention clearly requires the special
attention needs to be afforded to the protection of children. And I think that was one of the dimensions that Regina mentioned this morning, the protection of children being at the center of the rights that are to be afforded to the children. Article 33, which again was at the center of the presentation from Regina, particularly calls for states to protect children from illicit use of narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances as defined in relevant international treaties, and to prevent the use of children in illicit production and trafficking of such substances. And also Article 37 of the Convention itself, which relates to deprivation
of liberty should be a measure of last resort and be applied only for the shortest appropriate
period of time. So to UNODC, over-reliance on deprivation of children's liberty and insufficient application of drug treatment programs or other alternative to detention are a common challenge that we face today.
So in state and in compliance with Article 42 of the Convention,
UNODC works towards preventive, restorative, and rehabilitation approaches.
So, in addition to the Convention, to which UNODC is a guiding tool, what's also very important is that in regard, in this particular regard of the relationship between the Convention
and the Convention on the Rights of the Child on one hand, and the conventions to which UNODC, the UN Drug Conventions, the UNODC is a guardian to.
UNODC, and in particular the Commission on Narcotic Drugs itself, continues to place great importance on the welfare and the health of children across its programming. This year, for example, the CAE, the Commission on Narcotic Drugs, passed the resolution 65-4, which is on a promotion of comprehensive and scientific evidence based on early prevention.
And this resolution itself calls to member states to intensify scientific evidence. And again, this was a topic mentioned many and several times this morning, and we cannot emphasize this enough. Prevention efforts, especially among vulnerable members of the society, in cooperation with civil society and educational institutions. And this is a very important, I think, reference
within this particular resolution itself. So the resolution particularly makes reference to Article 33 of the Convention, which again provides the overarching connection between the Convention and the work of the UNODC. And when we look at the mandate of the organization, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, there are a number of programs or activities that we can look at and kind of show how the work of the organization is contributing to safeguarding the rights of youth. So, as a member state-based organization,
UNODC supports member states in addressing drug use and drug use disorders by implementing drug use prevention strategies and providing treatment, healthcare, social protection, and rehabilitation services. This particularly includes children and adolescents, based on scientific evidence, human rights, and gender considerations. And again, I think it was good also to see some member states within the audience who actually put this human rights aspect of the protection of the society as a whole within the drug issue at the center of their policies. So UNODC further promotes access to controlled drugs for medical purposes, whilst preventing the diversion and abuse of them. In all of our areas at UNODC, runs project and regularly publishes reports and guidelines and toolkits, and I'm very happy, Matesh, you blame us for, we are some of those organizations that you're blaming for all your evidence, and I guess that's a compliment to us as an organization. And I'm very glad that you take these instruments and tools and publications, reports, and make use of them in your implementation of the work that you do, but also in your advocacy work, but also, I think, also in your engagements with member states. So, some of the examples that we have on this particular issue is the Family Skills Program. And I guess Marco alluded to that at some point. And the Family Skills Program, particularly in Bangladesh. Let me see if I find my proper slide somewhere there before I confuse something. Let me see. Okay. Yeah. So in Bangladesh, for example, so the office that Marco runs, and Marco is here, so he will correct me if I'm presenting information that is not correct, covers also Bangladesh. And in this particular regard, the project that the office has been very careful in implementing, also together with WHO, has been to safeguard the human rights of Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. And this is being done together with the UNHCR, and there have been, as there are several refugees within Bangladesh through which this project is being implemented. And the result of that project has been that over 300 refugee families participated in this program, which included more than 622 caregivers and 620 children themselves in this project. So you can see also when we talk about partnership and the importance of partnership, organizations coming together, in this case, UNODC and the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, how a difference that could make. Because obviously UNODC comes in as focusing more on drug and crime issue, and UNHCR as responsible for the human rights of refugees. And the other very important initiative, actually, which is quite significant for us when it comes to working with civil society organizations, is this life and social skills collaboration with civil society organizations through the Lions Club's foundation. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Lions Clubs, but they actually have, right, some of you are nodding, they have chapters in many different countries. And we have been working with the Lions Club for several years now, also in Eastern Europe, where through skills for growing aimed at children between 5 and 9 years old, and skills for adolescents for children between 10 and 14 years old, and also skills for action, which is targeting more a little bit the teenagers, upper part of the teenagers between 15 and 19 years old, have actually led to the service of about 119 million children having benefited from the Lions Quest. I mean, you can imagine the sheer number of of the beneficiaries of this particular initiative. Again, showing the importance of partnership within civil society organizations, but also within the UN and civil society organizations in this case. So, and here is where I lost my slides. Now I'm back on track. So how, within the UNODC, how do we then make sure that these young people also understand what is happening at the decision-making level, right? So it's not enough for them to be here. And by the way, I really would like to acknowledge that they are here with us today, because I think intergenerational learning is very important in this whole discussion. To having young people's voices also represented at the table is critical. I think so. I think they deserve a round of applause. And I see some of them here who are not, they're probably supposed to be in a youth forum, but they are here. I'm not sure if you will be in trouble by not being where you're supposed to be, but it's good to have you here in the room. So within UNODC, we have this UNODC Youth Initiative. So a part of its prevention, as part of our prevention effort, UNODC introduced the UNODC Youth Initiative. And I know some of you have reservations about this particular initiative and the approach that it takes, which is more government-led, based on nominations of young people, but still is a space that is provided to young people to engage during the C&D. So it aims to connect young people from around the world and to empower them to become active members in their schools, their communities, and youth groups for substance use and prevention and health promotion. And as part of this, actually, we also provide a grant, which is called the Drug Abuse Prevention Center Grant, which is also, as these young people participate in Vienna, experience the work of policy making in Vienna, they go back in their communities. UNODC provides grants for them to implement some project in their schools or communities. And this becomes very important, of course, to making, let's say, to transforming what they learn at the policy making level into proper actions at the national level. So, I think it's Amy who said, when I'm trying to look at my note, when Amy was saying, so what can we do, right? Or what can be done? And I think she mentioned we need to listen, and we need to listen to the young people and to hear what they have to say and take their perspectives into account. And for us, I think one of the campaigns, one of the activities that we have, also to making sure that we encourage parents to actually listen to their children, is this so-called Listen First campaign. And its motto, of course, is listening to children and youth as a first step to helping them grow healthy and safe. And by the way, if I'm running out of time, please, somebody should come in and just give me a sign. Well, you know, you can easily go over time when you're talking about these things. So it is based on science, and it does an effective investment in well-being of children and youth, their families, and their communities. Furthermore, Listen First has produced a variety of educational videos and informational materials. Some of the materials are actually available in multiple languages, and we can always do better to make them even more accessible in different languages, like ideally in all languages of the world, but sometimes it's just not possible. In 2021, for example, just last year, new materials on the science of skills were added to this particular campaign, featuring super skills characters that promote science-based substance abuse prevention among primary-aged children. So furthermore, when we continue to look at the mandate of the organization, we see that the UN obviously recognizes the importance of supporting and actively engaging youth to pave safer, more peaceful world, also when it comes to counter organized crime and corruption. And this is a very important end, corruption, right? It's really a big emphasis on that, especially when you think about continents. It's everywhere, but corruption is prevalent in some parts, more in some parts of the world than the others. And now I'm really, at this point, thinking about my own continent of Africa and why maybe this becomes quite a big issue to address this one. So we have also the global program to end violence against children. It's very important, which was launched in 2015 with the objective to provide support to member states in preventing and responding to violence against children. We do research, which is very important. Again, Matej referring to some of our important flagship work, but also normative work where we support member states through technical assistance. And operational work where we implement, again, technical and cooperation projects to prevent child and youth involvement in crime prevention and strengthening the justice system. So the role of education obviously is very important. This is very, very personal to me, right? Even the fact that I'm speaking to you today is also one of my motivation also to speak, especially to young people. I would not be here if it were not for the education that I was given when growing up in refugee camps and experiencing many different challenges as many young people do around the world, especially these days. So education for me is quite personal. So therefore we have the Education for Justice, which was implemented until last year, and we encourage people to continue using the materials that we have over there. I see my colleagues is running, I have 2 minutes or 1 minute? 1 minute? Oh, absolutely, I take time for questions. So let me see where I am. And I intentionally put more slides on these presentations because I knew I'm going to be able to share this with you. So let me run through this just to mention a quick mention on a stakeholder engagement for UNTOC project, which is a project that I'm actually responsible for on the engagement of civil society organizations, academia, and the private sector in supporting member states in countering transnational organized crime. And here we have a number of resources and opportunities that also are very relevant to young people. For example, we have a youth advisory group or a youth group that also advises the program and implementation of this particular project as part of engagement of youth. I will let Marco chat with you a little bit more on this, and myself and him, we can do this during the break. But here I wanted to share some of the work and impact that we have done in the region itself, delivering about 2,600 capacity building activities, mentoring about 6,000 people and train many more, and assist over 4,000 opium farming families in the region. And again, there are many other examples. I think some of them even colleagues have already mentioned, and I'm happy to share this presentation later on, and we can talk about this during the break. And this was a very important initiative here in India, particularly, International Youth Day, where there was a joint consultation meeting convened by UNODC regional office here and engaged many young people here in the region. And this is a vibrance of Indian youth. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, if I would like to set up the first youth regional group, it would probably be here in India. So there you go, there you go. I see a partner for this one over there. Okay, so in Bhutan we have done a lot of work as well, but again here you will find this information in the presentation. And I just wanted to say on the way forward, we really are aiming to provide and to promote space and provide more space for young people. And recently we have just launched a youth consultation, again to listen to the youth and understand how can we engage you better, and how can we not just bring you at the table, but actually take most of your ideas and perspectives into account when we are doing our work. So we are through the UNODC, new UNODC strategy, right, 2021-2025. There's a big emphasis on working with youth and civil society, and we're going to continue to doing this, building on your ideas that we will get also from this particular forum. So that's it from me. This is my contact and my office's contact details if you'd like to send us an email and stay in touch with us. So And with that, I will be open for some questions if I still have some time. Thank you so much. Two questions. So apparently I can take two questions, so I have to be careful. Do I have the right to choose which one? Okay, two questions. So let me see. There's a big light over there, so I cannot see anyone from there. I see two people here. So I say I take that gentleman at the back first, and then I come back to Musa. All right. There's a gentleman over there.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. And also thank you to UNODC. We usually use you as a reference point, especially for development of policy documents and all that. I also wanted to reference this with the previous presenter. He talked about what doesn't work, you know? And thinking about what you talked about, I also always thought about schools. Education and entry point is the schools. But does it work? You know, all the competing priorities at the school itself. And when we talk about education, probably the challenge is maybe to you and your experience. Do we need to start looking elsewhere in terms of entry? Because schools are proving to be to have a lot of work, a lot of development, a lot of exams, and all that. I sit at the Colombo plan, and this is one of the biggest challenges that we have, especially is what is the entry point to reach the child? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I take the second question, and then I can answer both of them. Musa here, please. And I think that's it. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Billy, as usual. You give us a very informative presentation. I have a question regarding to the WHO recommendations and how UNODC address the recommendations of rescheduling the cannabis, and how you manage to work in a prevention programs while there is a lot of campaigns, legalization and decriminalization of using the medical marijuana and recreational use as well. So how we can address to protect children with human rights and children rights with a drug-free childhood, while a lot of countries, especially the European countries, who's going with legalization cannabis as well. And also, is there any new recommendations reached the UNODC? And what's the future, in your opinion, and UNODC opinion, regarding how we can protect our children while legalization for recreational use is going on and on? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that last question. I probably ask Marco to respond to it because it's a little bit beyond my pay grade to respond to. But on where else to look for solutions, I think you are in the right place. Let me put it that way. You are in the right place. If schools are not working, obviously we need to do more in that. But honestly, like VENDA, there's this particular project over there. This is, for me, it's a good example of where else you can look, right? In NGO communities, in civil society groups, that quite often actually provide services that even governments are not providing, although they should be providing it, right? There are many reasons why they're not doing that. So you are in the right place, and I think you are doing the right things as well, because I think you are also an NGO. So I usually say that usually the solution is within yourselves, right? Sometimes you don't have to look too far or to look to invent something. The solution is really within yourselves. You just have to look at yourselves and see how you can bring that together. So, but to the other question, how to address this, safeguard the future of our children when governments are legalizing some of the drugs. As I said, I will probably leave it to Marco at some point to respond to. I know that as UNODC, we're a member state-based organization, right? So we support member states to do what they would like us to do. Now, some member states view legalization as in the interest of their own people. In this case, UNODC has unfortunately nothing to say to that. If a member state decides to do that, we know, that there are different models in Canada, in the Netherlands, in Portugal, in different other countries. But Marco is from Portugal. Even maybe he can answer you in the context of a Portuguese, not a UN staff member, and he can tell you how that is working. But with that, thank you so much once again for the invitation, and really looking forward to the outcome of this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Billy. Our next plenary session is Mr. C.C. Joseph, Director, Fourth Way Foundation. Mr. Joseph will elaborate on Project VENDA, the Kerala model of drug policy programs focused on children. I invite Mr. C.C.
Check. Laptop out. Good afternoon. I know this is the best time to speak, because all of you will be agreeing to me, so I'll take it as a positive point that you are agreeing to everything that I say. So before I start, can we all stand up for a moment, please? So I can be sure that most of you don't agree with what I'm going to say. Just turn to the person next to you, okay, and say, I appreciate the work that you have been doing for so many years. You can sit down there. I'm sure as civil society members, most of you would agree to me that appreciation is the last thing that comes to you. Criticism is the first thing. Okay, if something doesn't work, then everything is on you, but if things work, then others are doing it. That's why it is working. So occasionally it's good to appreciate each other. Let me start with the idea of perspectives, on how perspectives matter. So I have Max and Fax, two friends who are in a habit of smoking, and they want to talk to their guru, their leader, on whether it is right to smoke while they pray. Okay? So Max goes to his guru or his teacher and asks the teacher, is it okay to smoke when I pray? And the guru gave his head to him. He's saying, you cannot smoke when you pray because that is the biggest distraction. Fax was a little smarter. He went to the guru and said, can I pray when I smoke? Guru said, wow, that's wonderful. That will give you concentration or you will be able to quit. So many a times what matters is perspectives. And many times if people don't agree or understand what we are saying, it might not be their problem. It is because we might not be giving it in the perspective that they understand. So this afternoon, I quickly bring to you what we want to introduce at this conference as the Kerala model, something that we have been working in the last 8 to 10 years, something that we have tried, we have tested, we have failed, we have reinvented, or we have come back, and few things that we think has been working in Kerala. And I was hearing a couple of you saying that many things that we do in maybe the Western or the developed countries might not work in low resource settings. So what we have been able to do and how we have been able to impact, just a few quick thoughts. So first question is, why Kerala model? I don't know if you are following news or if you check certain snippets. There's a steep increase in the usage of drugs. From our informal survey, okay, don't quote me anywhere, from our informal survey, what we have seen is during or immediately after the COVID season, the usage of drugs, which before the COVID season was around 10 to 12%, had become 24%. That is doubled, and I'm talking to you with regard to children, okay, who we are working with. So there's a steep increase. Then there's a drastic increase in the maybe crime rate because of drugs. Most of the arrests that you see, or most of the arrests that happen in Kerala, is in one way or the other related to substance abuse. So it's nice, you should watch some news channel sometime. Okay, and like any other country, we always have breaking news. That is nothing new, but you will see very nice breaking news, and you will be sure that every day you will see some news article about crime. Third is juvenile incarceration is increasing. There are a lot of youngsters who are filling up our maybe incarcerations, filling up our jails, and actually we don't know what to do next, because that might not be the right way ahead. Lack of child treatment and care protocols, okay, we don't have. And finally, lack of trained public health professionals. We have a lot of public health professionals, but very few are actually trained to work with children who are having this substance use problem. Second important question is, why youth? Why should we focus on youth? I'm talking about India, okay, and maybe I would want you to watch this video. Once again, yeah.
Don't I matter? Doesn't my future matter? Don't children matter? Nothing to boast, just a story of childhood lost. My childhood that you stole from me. How long before you open your eyes and see? You let me believe that it's not a big deal to smoke, and my candies laced with drugs make me choke. You make me roll your drag and carry your drugs. You let me believe that getting high is cool, when really I should have been in school. You don't seem to mind that I don't play, or where I go when I'm missing, when you kneel down to pray. You let me believe I don't matter, and say there are issues that are larger. You let me think it doesn't matter if I exist, and all of this is just a big problem in a gist. So tell me, don't I really matter? Doesn't my future matter? Don't children matter?
Actually, I don't have an answer to that question. If our children start asking this question to us, I don't know how many of you will be able to give an answer to them. The biggest blessing of a country like India is we say that we are in a youth bulge. Can I have my presentation, please? Okay. We are in a youth bulge where it is a very unique situation where almost 50% of the population is youngsters. Okay, 50% of the population is youngsters, and in a state like Kerala, we are very clearly seeing targeted marketing done to children. You know, they sell explicitly to children. They make sure that children get it. They make sure that it is available in places where it is accessible for children. So maybe we say the other side is 100% focusing on children because they know that's a long-term market. What are we doing? Okay, when we talk about prevention, when we talk about care, what are we doing, especially in a country like India where, you know, at least till 2036, our youth population will be the highest. Okay, we are one of the youngest population in the country. So what is this Kerala model? I'm not telling you something that you have not tried and tested. This is something that we have been able to implement in Kerala. The first thing that we say is prevention, treatment and recovery focused on drug demand reduction. Okay, for example, in the last year itself, we were able to reach to a few thousand youngsters, support them in their journey back into the society. Okay, and it was done not by our staff alone, because we don't have enough staff to support all the children. Okay, but we have a network in the community which helps the children journey back. I'm sure you know how big a stigma it is for an adult when they journey back. Imagine what would be the stigma on the child when they come back and say that we have a problem with. I want to share one simple story that one of our friends share. You will hear him in detail maybe tomorrow, but he always shares this. Just the highlight of it is, a few years back, parents around his household where he was staying used to point at him and tell their children, don't play with him, you will become a bad boy. Today, the same parent comes to this young man's house, gives the child's hand into this young man and says, you should take care of my child. You should tell my child not to do drugs. Okay. You'll hear him, he is working with us, you will hear him a lot. So that is one first thing. Second is focus on health education at an early age through school-centric student intervention. Last year alone, we were able to reach around 3 lakh children. Okay, and VENDA technically is a negative word, right? We should not be telling children don't do. Because if you tell children don't do, then very often they will go ahead and do. So we are actually not telling children don't do. VENDA is not something that we tell children. Children stand up and say we don't want. Okay, that is a big difference in the way we approach this whole problem. We never go to a classroom or talk to a child and say don't do, because then that gives them lots of ideas. We go to the classroom, we equip the child to make a decision. We tell them, or him or her, what are the challenges that are ahead of you, and the child stands up and says, no, VENDA. One challenge we face as a community in Kerala, I don't know about other countries, is, let's say if somebody is serving liquor at home, very often is the child who brings the glass or the ice cubes or whatever so we tell from there, you should be equipped to say no to your parents. Very often when we tell this during parents' workshop, they say, you are teaching our children to rebel. I said, if they don't rebel now, then they might not be there for you to talk to in the future. So we work with, we have reached to around 3 lakh children. Our dream is to reach to all the youngsters in the state of Kerala. Third, address at scale the need for capacity building to manage cycle for care, treatment and like I said, for example, in the last 1 year, we have trained over 1,200 school counselors, equipping them to relate to children when they come with substance abuse problem. Another problem we face is, for us, denial is the solution for everything. A couple of months back, we had a parent and a child sitting in our office in front of our counselor. The child is telling the counselor, I have addiction problem. The mother, who is a doctor, is telling the counselor, no, my child doesn't have a problem. His friends have problems. None of the schools have problem, only neighboring schools have problem. None of our communities have problem, only communities around us have. That is why we are vulnerable. We never own up to our problem. So what we are teaching our communities is to say, yes, we have problem and we need to find solution. We have come out with a couple of handbooks for parents, for counselors on how to broach this whole situation, because there's no point in not talking and leaving it to a state where we don't know what to do next. Fourth important thing is we work on child-centric approach with the focus of holistic development through alternate pursuits. Okay, like if you are from Kerala, you will know that there was a time when we had lot of places to play. Our schools never closed. The sun decided when the gates of the school closes. Today, 4 o'clock sharp, the moment the bell rings, the first thing that closes is the school gate. Because nobody wants to give access to children into there, because then if the window breaks, the principal is responsible. If the door is broken, the principal is responsible. If something untoward happens, so the best thing is close the gates. No places for our children to play. So we are working with the government, asking them, don't create new infrastructure. That you can do, but at least what is available, make it accessible to our children. Open the doors. And we have VENDA Cup. This year, immediately after this, the whole team is working on VENDA Cup, because December 2nd week is VENDA Cup, which is a football tournament. Last year we had around 64 teams, half of which were girls teams, okay, because we work and we make sure that women are also equally represented. And in Kerala, the problem is also not very different. Okay, Kerala is a very unique state. I don't know if you have studied Kerala. We technically don't have villages and cities. Okay, Kerala is almost similar throughout. We don't have rich and poor divide when it comes to substance use or abuse. We don't have any religious divide. We are very religious harmony is there when it comes to substance abuse. No gender bias when it comes to substance abuse. No age difference also. Schools are calling us today to take class for year 3 students, because they are saying that from year 3 they are exposed to these problems. Okay. So we work in that area, and VENDA Cup has become one of the hits. This year we have teams from all the 6 districts that we are going to, or we are working in, because we believe that youngsters need to, and when we do, we try to give them the best. Okay? And the only thing that we do is we give them an aspiration, a hope that yes, there is a different way of looking at life. There's a different way of looking at things. Then 5th is enhancing sustainable development goals through healthy, this one, I'm sure Regina and team knows SOVI. We have a group of teenagers actually working with us, working around. Some of them are here. Can the SOVI team just lift your hands, please? Okay. Teenagers who are in their own little way trying to be what they are. Okay. And it's nice to sometimes work with them. We have the SAFE team. Like I said, we have the safety, that is Team Youth, joining us on the 3rd day, because only with youngsters, at least we at VENDA believe there will be a solution for this problem. We cannot discuss and find a solution. We will only give ideas, but if it has to be implemented, it has to be through the youngsters, through our schools and universities. And finally, youth speaking to youth is what we believe is the final solution for this problem. Diana and me or Shalini, we never go to a classroom to take session. They will not listen to us. We can feel very nice and we can write reports after reports saying that we have presented in so many places, but I don't know. We know that they are not listening to us. Okay, but when a youngster goes and speaks, it is their elder, someone little senior to them, who has actually seen the world in the recent past, and the way they relate to them is so very different. Though we don't want to say this, but sadly after every session, almost 10 to 15% of the youngsters in the classroom come out for counseling, which is a very scary situation, which is a very, very, alarming situation. And the best way, the way we say that youngsters find their own way out is what you see outside, the installation. If I was given an opportunity, I will not spend the night working on that. I will say, you print something, put a banner and say children matter. But till last night the team was here working on that installation. Okay, so what they have done. I want to call out Rohit. Just lift your hand, Rohit. Yes. Rohit and his team is behind this. Okay, Rohit is actually from Ernakulam, which is around 5 hours drive from here. He came here 1 week before, and he was spending time here trying to figure out how to make this happen. Okay, so I was, like I said, if I was given an option, I will only find the easy way out. I will not go in or put in so much of effort. So maybe that is how the young today want to be associated with or talked with, how they want to work on. So what is our impact? Very often people ask, what has been our impact? Our impact, I will very quickly share through what has happened in the government system in the last few years. All those who attend conferences, I am sure if you have organized conference, one of the biggest criticisms that come at a conference is what? What's the point of a conference? A lot of people will come, talk and go. Does conference have an outcome? I have some good news to share. Okay, the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore has done a study on the conferences that we have done. Okay, and they have come out with a study to show that conferences actually have impact. Okay, have a certain impact if followed up in the proper way. So 2019 we had a conference. Okay, some of you were there, and we presented a paper to the government of Kerala. And today whatever we see happening is a result of what we have shown in that paper. I'll give you some examples. Okay, for example, the first thing that we proposed was all intervention or majority of the intervention should be child-centric. Okay, the government couple of months back made a major decision that we need to do child-centric approaches. In that white paper, we had said that we need a curriculum that could be taught in schools. Today, government is working on a curriculum that can be taught in the schools. Okay, all this is recommendation from people who gathered in the conference. Second important thing was curriculum-based approach, like I said. So slowly, I hope maybe next academic year onwards, there will be certain curriculum. Now, is that a solution for everything? I don't know. But that is surely the beginning for many things, at least beginning for discussions to happen around the subject of substance abuse. Third big proposition we gave was alternate pursuits. And today government is launching huge campaigns where youngsters are engaged in various alternate things. And it's nice to see, huge campaigns, huge projects that are coming up. And we hope that, there was a time, if you like football, we have what we call the Santosh Trophy or maybe the nationals, where most of the players in the national team were from Kerala. Okay, today you don't have any. But maybe if we go this way, we will regain the glory of the past. Not that football is important or not important, but kids will have something to be occupied with. Fourth, we always said that multi-stakeholder model. I know you will not like what I am saying, but I have to say, very often, one of the biggest challenges with civil society is we don't come together in a because we all apply for the same grants. If you are not there, it's okay, but I'm just being very honest with you all. And so what happens is, rather than collaborating, there is more friction that comes. Let's say I am sitting at the table with a particular government official, and they ask me about some other project or some other NGO. Very rarely will that NGO say good about the other. No, not you all. You all only talk good things. We are talking about the other guys who have not come into the program over here. Unless and until we collaborate, we come together, all of us take this effort together, I don't think we will be able to find a solution. One project VENDA alone is not enough. One WFAD is not enough. We need a lot of people to come together. Okay, and that is what we have been proposing, and government is working on a lot of steering zone. And finally, we talked about community participation, because beyond a particular point, we believe that the government will not be able to do much. I'll give you one example before I wind up. In some of the communities that we work in, we realized that the point where children get access to drugs is when the school finishes around 4 in the evening. There are suppliers standing or people with drugs standing at their gates, school gates. Okay, so technically they are not inside the school. Okay, so they are in a way safe. They're not supposed to be 100 meters around, but it doesn't happen. today in the communities that where we have worked, if a stranger is seen outside a school gate in the evening, people will come and ask, what are you doing here? Have you come to collect someone? So what is happening is the schools are becoming very safe. So if the community starts becoming awake, then I believe the solution is there. And that is what we believe at VENDA. That is what we believe at Fourth Wave Foundation. So I'll ask you to stand for one more minute. I know you are sitting in very comfortable tables. Okay, most of you are sitting with someone you know. So can you turn to someone you don't know or you have not met and really genuinely say thank you for what you are doing? If it means a few seconds of walking around, you are free to do so. If you're finished, you can sit down, please. I have one more request. Okay, you all can continue talking, no problem. I have one more request to all the participants here. Okay. Tomorrow would be a comfortable day because the number of youngsters are still less. If you wait for day 3, you will have another 150 joining. Please walk up to one or two of them and just appreciate them, that's all. Okay, don't give them a lesson, don't give them a teaching, don't say don't do drugs. Okay, they will give us more information than we. No issue. Even to the point of just going and say thank you for coming. Thank you for taking a stance, because if they have decided to come here, they have told their friends that they are taking a stance. So thank you for taking that stance. So please walk up to one or two at least and just pat on their back and say thank you for taking this stance, and I'm sure that will make a big difference in the life of the youngsters. Okay? So thank you and all the best. We are still waiting for the minister, so we continue, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. We now have the first panel discussion, which will be moderated by Mr. Johnson J. Edayaranmula. And Mr. Johnson is again, has been a great supporter of Project VENDA from our last 2019 conference. He is the Executive Director and National Resource Center for Non-Communicable Diseases, Director, Alcohol and Drug Information Center, India. Mr. Johnson J. Edayaranmula played a significant role in the area of alcohol and substance abuse prevention, adolescent and youth empowerment, prisoners' welfare and reformation, and road safety for the past 47 years. He served as a subject expert in developing the World Health Organization Global Alcohol Strategy, National Draft Policy on Alcohol and Substance Use for India, WHO Government of India Country Cooperation Strategy. Mr. Johnson addressed the World Health Assembly's special session on children in Geneva in 1994, United Nations General Assembly session on special session on World Drug Problem in New York in 1998 and the United Nations World Drug Forum in Bangkok in 2004. He was also invited as special guest by the United States government to observe and evaluate the narcotic education prevention programs in the US. It is indeed an honor to have you with us, Mr. Johnson. Despite your health condition, you still agreed to be part of this forum. This goes on to show your commitment to the cause, and over to you, Mr. Johnson. I would also like to invite the panelists, Mr. Shakya, Ms. Kavita Ratna, Ms. Sumnima, and Dr. Arun. Kindly come to the stage. And there is one more announcement. This is for the Youth Forum representatives. You are asked to go back to your venue now. You can.
A very good afternoon to all my dear brothers, sisters, and friends. I'm not playing it now. What is that? It's indeed a great pleasure and a privilege to be here. And I'm really thankful to the God Almighty because I never thought I can be here. Because last 15 to 17 months, I was fighting the dreadful cancer who has become my close friend. I had a very serious surgery at Vellore Christian Medical College Hospital. Was in the hospital for more than 21 days. Was in Vellore for more than 1.5 months. And last 1 year, I was undergoing chemotherapy at Believers Medical College Hospital in Tiruvalla. And when Mr. Joseph was telling about this beautiful conference, I had always the temptation to come. I said, I don't know, if God willing, I'll be here. And I must thank God that I am here today because of the prayers of many. And I don't know how to express my appreciation to this lovely organization which has made very positive impact during the last few years. The commitment, the dedication is praiseworthy. I know the whole team because when they organized the first event in Cochin, I could be part of that in many ways. Mr. Joseph and Diana is just like my siblings. So whenever they have something, they always ask, and I'm always happy to share whatever comes to my mind. So this is a very special occasion. And after my disastrous situation, this is my first open stage tour. In fact, in between, I was blessed to be part of the formation of the National Resource Center for Non-Communicable Diseases at the beautiful campus of Believers Medical College, which was inaugurated by the Governor of Kerala, participated by WHO and other government officials in on April 28 this year itself, while I was undergoing chemotherapy there. Anyhow, we have a very good, what you call this panel discussion with real experts who has got a lot of experience in this field for so many years. I just want to show just 2 slides which everybody knows, which has a lot of focus on the children. Article 39 of the Directive Principles of the State Policy, which states, the state shall in particular direct its policy towards securing that children are given opportunities and facilities to develop in a healthy manner and in conditions of freedom and dignity, and that childhood and youth are protected against exploitation and against moral and material abandonment. And this is most touching to all those who are working in the field. These lines by Gabriela Mistral. We are guilty of so many errors and many faults. But our worst crime is abandoning the children. Many of the things we need can wait. The child cannot. To him, we cannot answer tomorrow. His name is today. So we know his name is today. And this particular conference is to highlight that children matter, and his name is today. So let me straight go to this very important panel discussion. The global drug policy advocacy efforts focused on children. We have got 4 excellent presenters here. We will go one by one. Mr. Shakya Nanayakkara, who has been working in the field for, I know almost all these people for more than 2.5 decades, because we were working together. Many of the dignitaries or friends here have been working for so many years in the field. So the commitment is very clear. And Mr. Shakya was part of the lot of health social movements in Sri Lanka. And fortunately, after the announcement of this conference, recently he was nominated as the chairman of the National Dangerous Drug Control Board of Sri Lanka. So we are very happy, because in the first designation, he was Secretary General of Healthy Lanka in this program. If you can see, note that. So this program has got some influence in you, So he will be our first presenter. He is currently, as I mentioned, is a General Secretary General of the Healthy Lanka, a leading alcohol and drug prevention organization in Sri Lanka. He started his work with the Alcohol and Drug Information Center, ADIC Sri Lanka, in 1989 as a consultant. And since then, he became an active campaigner and advocate for alcohol and drug prevention, advocacy and treatment. From 2004 to 2006, he worked as the Deputy Chairman of the National Dangerous Drug Control Board, Sri Lanka. He has published several books on alcohol and drug prevention and treatment, including the Community Action Manual on Drug Prevention. So let us hear from Mr. Shakya Nanayakkara, then we go to the other presenters. So I think 10 minutes is enough for you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and organizers for inviting me for this great occasion. And I'm actually representing civil society, but after confirming the attendance here, I was made the chairman of the National Dangerous Drugs Control Board. So I am now like Gongo, right? Representing Gongo. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, if I start with the Sri Lankan experience, in Sri Lanka, every year 40,000 people die due to alcohol, tobacco and drug use. They are the best customers of alcohol industry, tobacco industry and drug mafia, the best customers. So when 40,000 people kill their best customers, what do you think the industry does? Industry recruit 40,000 new customers every year, and they are mostly the children, because they are not targeting at adults, but they are targeting children. They market their products to children, so violating the CRC, most of the sections of the CRC. So 40,000 individuals die every year, and they are mostly men. And every year, I think more than 35,000 women lose their husbands, and then about 70,000 children, they are becoming fatherless. So you can imagine the impact of this alcohol, tobacco and drug issues for children. So that is one area which I would like to address. Then we discuss about the Article 33, but in Sri Lanka, some years back in 2006, we enacted this NATA Act, where to protect children, where a person shall not sell, offer for sale or permit or promote sale of tobacco products, alcohol products to any person under 21 years of age. So we consider alcohol and tobacco are the gateway drugs for other things. So in prevention, we consider working on alcohol and drug prevention is also extremely important issue. Right. At the same time, NATA Act, it prohibits all kind of advertising. If you come to Sri Lanka, you will see there are no advertisements visible, and actually both surrogate advertisements also prohibited. Recently I visited Nepal. I saw many advertisements there, and it all reminds me about the past of Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, it was like that. So I had the opportunity of discussing so many mayors, at least 2-3 mayors, where they agreed, at least in their constitution, they are going to prohibit alcohol and tobacco advertising. So likewise, I think to prevent children from initiating alcohol and other drug use, this kind of advertisements should be banned in our countries. Then two things I have to mention when compared to the West. Sometimes prevention education has a very low profile in many researchers in the West. They sometimes say education does not work in alcohol, tobacco and drug policies. But we have to say, in our communities, in Asian context, actually prevention education works with the children. Second thing, I had not only in Sri Lanka, I had the privilege of visiting India and Nepal both. So we have seen how communities are changed in these countries. About 2 weeks back, I visited the area in Nepal where they have declared completely alcohol, tobacco and drug free villages in those areas, and I just interrogated them as a lawyer as well to see the reality there, and I found it works. Alcohol free, tobacco free and drug free communities. So in our areas in Asia, we can say the community action works in this region. Right. I would like to say with our experience what actually may not effective children. As one of the speakers mentioned, using fear in communication, because if you tell children that this is dangerous, they like to do dangerous things. I can see the young boys and girls here, if you ask them to climb a mountain, just a simple mountain, they may not agree to climb. If the mountain is very high and then very dangerous, and even last month, someone died after falling from that mountain, climbing that mountain is very enjoyable. So we call it peril is the lure, the danger is the kick. So if we say this is fearful, then it may not productive, even counterproductive, many literature are there. Then the demonstrating how drugs are used. Sometimes if the police go and say this is the way, so it is a promotion. Classification of drugs, why? We do classifications with children sometimes. So they may use it as a menu. Hey, tomorrow what are we going to use? They use that matter. Sorry to say that, say no to drugs. And actually Joseph mentioned it comes from the children, but just we go and say no to drugs, so this prohibition may not work with children. Then I have some doubts with the other areas also, decision making, providing alternative, self-esteem development, life skills development, using didactic process in communication. These are very good things for children and for youth, I know. But expert drug organization go and doing the decision making programs, I always surprised. Girl Guides, Boy Scouts doing it, it's okay. But if we have the expertise on alcohol and drug education and repeating what other youth organization, children organization doing, I have my doubts there. And decision making. Do you think that people use drugs or alcohol because they don't know how to make decisions? Right? Sometimes educators, I had the privilege of working in Geneva sometimes back, about I think 20 years back. After sessions they go and use alcohol, which is a drug. Don't they know how to make decisions? So, but they don't know something. What is that? That has to be discovered. Anyway, these may be, if we do, doing these things are very important, but if we expect that will prevent young people from using alcohol or drugs or other things, I have my doubts there. Even there are so many researchers on these issues as well. Then, I like to show this thing, right? We tell children about the dangers, ill, death, financial outlay, social industries, and at the same time, we say life skills development, whatever, right? On the other hand, they are being socially learned that this is very pleasurable, this is very beneficial. To be macho, when I use drugs, I become, then this is the new trend, and I become brave, and I can forget problems, I can ease tiredness. So those are the things, the positive expectations about the alcohol or drugs. So on one side we say danger, and the other side we think this is very pleasurable. So if someone convinced that alcohol or drug use is pleasurable, maybe in a party, best decision is to use alcohol or drugs. Okay, if it is pleasurable, if it is his perception. But what is prevention? Prevention means challenging all these positive outcome expectancies. So it is not pleasurable, but it is suffering and painful. Using alcohol, actually, what do you feel in your head? What do you feel in your body? That is what I am asking with the heroin users. Hey, after using heroin, how did you feel in your head? It is like rotating. How did you feel in your body? It is, imbalance, lack of coordination. Then where is the happy feeling? Where did you feel it? Then they start questioning these things. Problems. I asked them, find a person who had 20 problems earlier, he started using alcohol, now he is having only 10 problems. Get that man to me. Then they start thinking whether it is increasing problems or it decreases problems. Even the tiredness, after using alcohol, does it ease your tiredness? Right. So likewise, then what happened, that this is the way, the forget problems, problems aggravated. Relax, tiredness increases. Sleep well, but they don't actually reach the REM stage even. Eat well, no. That reduces appetite. Enhance sexual desire, no, it decreases sexual desire, right? So likewise, challenging the drug expectancies is extremely important thing as I see in this area. When it is challenged, what happened? It is not pleasurable, but we can put it to the other side also. It is pain and suffering. And is it tiredness? No, it increases tiredness. So using drug is not macho, but it is actually foolish thing to do. So now we are not only removing this, we can add it to that, then we can see the users going to non-user. But existing situations you can see, right, non-users, in this social milieu, what happens? A non-user automatically comes to the use, right? But in the changed social milieu, right, then we know if, and this is within himself, on oneself, one side, and the other thing is the social milieu. Then we know the user also moves to the other side. Okay. There are other ways of explaining this, but which I am not going to use that because the time constraint. And actually, this is not the chemical or pharmacological effect, but the symbol of happiness, symbol of rebelliousness, symbol of masculinity, symbol. This is only a symbol, right? Shall we drink something? All of a sudden, they become happy and elated. A drug user who is having sick, right? He take his drugs and put it into a pocket and coming back, in his coming back, his sickness, the withdrawal discomfort vanish most of the time. Why? How it happens? These are the things we discuss with the drug users. Okay. So, drug prevention, education, and social change works. Thank you.
So that was the excellent presentation by Mr. Shakya, where he has emphasized that prevention works. So next we have Ms. Kavita Ratna, who is the Director of Advocacy and Fundraising, the Concern for Working Children in India. Kavita is presently the Director of CWC, which has been thrice nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for its excellence in child participation practice. So we can give a big clap. She has been engaged with child rights advocacy since 1990 and holds numerous national and international portfolios. Kavita is a member of the UN Expert Group Committee on Children's Participation, set up by the Committee on the Rights of the Child and UNICEF to input into the general comments of the CRC Committee on Article 12 on children's right to participation, as well as the general comment on adolescence. So we know also for the last 3 decades, so very happy to invite Kavita Ratna.
Thank you very much, and a very good afternoon to all of you. I'm really a novice in this space because the work with alcohol, drugs has been something we've been doing for a while, but absolutely not at the depth of what many of you are doing. My organization enters this space from the point of view of children and children's right to participation, and that is how I'll proceed. I think for most of us here, since morning, the argument of why we need to work with children in terms of doing things for children, I think is quite clear. You know, we are already talking of many examples of how children have been users or have been affected by somebody else using in their family or in their circle, and also that they are also citizens, not tomorrow but of today, and that they are entitled to protection. We've also talked of that.
And I think there were many examples here also of generational harm for children, not just in their own generation, but something which is perpetuated over many generations. And yes, in many, many cases, the children we work with, I work with very vulnerable children, that they are their own first line of defense. They don't have anyone else. So they need to be protected. There's no questions about that. And also that we also see that while it is their right to be protected, and that we have a responsibility to protect them. I think there is no debate on that. But just shifting it a little bit, and thank you, Regina, for the discussion earlier about the UN Convention on Rights of the Child. Just spotlighting it a little bit. There were some interesting discussions about why is it that United States of America has not signed the UNCRC, and I think you gave some official examples, but there are some other behind the story, curtain stories, but we don't have to take that up. But let's say that there are a lot of people who view children's rights in a bit of an ostrich manner, in terms of taking into account what works, and anything that challenges an existing status quo is a bit of a no-no. And so that's why I actually would like to go a step earlier than UNCRC and go to the Human Rights Convention, if we call it the Mother Convention. And even United States of America has ratified the Human Convention on Civil and Political Rights. And the very first article there is a right to self-determination, which actually is what makes something a right. When the parties affected have a say in their life, that is when it moves from being a welfare into a rights framework. So even UNCRC has to be understood within Article 1 of the Human Rights Convention, which is right to self-determination, which means that we are talking of children's right to be part of these decisions is not because we think it's useful, not because we are being good, benevolent adults, but because it is their right. And if they are not part of any solution, it is a violation of our rights. How we do it better, how we do it best, we need to learn how to do it. But that it needs to be done does not need an argument. And when we talk of rights, there are a whole list of rights which were shared, 43 of them. There are these I would like to flag from the point of view of participation. One, of course, is the principle of best interest. But the big question is, who determines what is in their best interest? Do we determine it? Or are they part of determining it? And if they have to be part of determining it, do they have the right to information, right to understanding, and right to self-expression? Now, these become very critical because for all of us to be meaningfully participating, we need information. We need the knowledge. Otherwise, on what basis are we taking those decisions? And I really wish a lot of the young people who are meeting elsewhere, I wish they were here today. Because I think all of us speak from our own box of experience, and to expand that box, we need to hear each other. Not hear each other after all our decisions taken at the last point, but learn together with each other. I really wish they were here. Because one is, of course, the fact is that when children have a right to participate, and when they exercise that right, we have seen that a lot of our responses also become much more contextualized. They become tangible, they become relevant. And I've seen this happen in all the areas of protection and provision I've done work with in children. And also, especially when they're right on their own, there is no one else, they need to be fully equipped to be able to participate, but not in a reactive manner. Not just responding and reacting, but to set agendas. How do they do that? And also we have seen that this is imperative when we are talking of a generational change for children. And this response of how a child moves from being reactive into setting an agenda comes from strength, comes from a position of being able to negotiate, comes from being in a situation where they can actually hold an adult accountable. And what we have seen is that these changes, I have now been working with my organization for 32 years. I've been very lucky to see a lot of young people actually become adults, actually hold positions of power, actually make a change to not just their own lives, but to an entire system around them. So I've actually seen that transformational change that I'm talking about. And whenever we are talking of participation, it is not separate from protection or provision. And this is actually very critical. Also when we say that we are talking of prevention, preemption, and also redressal. And these become very important because if we don't see this as a continuous process, many of you talk today, situations are changing, things are changing so dynamically. Well, long ago, one of our young people told us, you know, the problem with you adults is you forget that you were once children. But what I've also learned, it's not enough even for me to remember when I was a child, because childhood today has changed. The nature of childhood today has changed. We were talking to young people about age of marriage, and all the adult data was about, you know, infant mortality rate and maternal mortality rate, and they are talking to us about sexuality and age of consent. The whole conversation is different. So if we do not understand what's happening in their life, how are we even going to relate to them and understand what they're going through? Our work examples, I don't have the time to elaborate, but we work with very, very poor children. And the reason they took up the issue of alcohol abstinence was because their lives was affected by that. They were being beaten at home, they were not able to study, there was a lot of frustration. And they took it up because it was something which was bothering them, not because it was bothering us, but it was bothering them. But they also felt they needed to learn a lot more. All of this has been well documented, how they went about collecting information, locating where the sales were happening, who was abusive, what was happening. And based on all that data, there was a lot of things they learned, which was very important. The first thing they learned was that people who abuse alcohol were not bad people, but the way they behaved when they were under the influence was bad. This made a very big difference, basically because we were talking about their own father and mother and sister. They didn't want to be shamed. They didn't want to shame them. And that changed the way we talked about it. They changed our vocabulary in terms of how we related to them. And they looked at different categories, they tried to understand it. But what we found was that they were approaching it in a very grounded and a very sensitive manner. And that was very important because we had to work with them, not only on this issue, but many, many issues related to their own protection. The empathy they brought in, the way they looked at not just individual choices, but there was a lot of state policy which was aggressively pushing sale of alcohol. Like in my state from Karnataka, there are huge targets set for how much revenue should be earned from sale of alcohol. And you have these poor children in a poor village saying, we don't want an alcohol shop. It's really the Davids of this whole battle. So that they had to even understand that. And they also had to see from experience how important it was for them to stay away from alcohol dependency, because they didn't want this to happen again to them and their children and their families. And the things they learned through this experience was much more than anything we could have ever told them in any form or many of the examples that we took today. And what we also saw was that any single point of saying we will ban sale of alcohol, all of this my state has tried to do at the government level, banning sale of low-cost alcohol like the ADIC ban. And they understood what had actually happened, that it did not stop anybody from drinking, but actually people started spending more trying to buy more expensive liquor because the dependence had not been addressed. So these were situations, these were examples children were raising before us. They were bringing this analysis. And they were also talking of how then to work with very local governments. One thing I must share here, that a lot of our work with participation is not only about a theme or an issue. It is on all issues. They are talking and participating in all issues, and this is one of the many issues, so it is not separate. And their participation is collective participation. This I'd like to underline because alone, a lot of our children are very vulnerable. Together is their strength. And being together in their own communities, they manage to get respect and acknowledgement, courage, and their skills to actually map information. We do a lot of work with simplifying and demystifying research and analysis with them. And many of these children, mind you, may not even be able to read or write. So it is this group of children who are analyzing information, presenting their case, presenting solutions, And what they have done through their work is, in terms of not just being powerful advocates, they have become role models for a lot of women in the community, for a lot of the very vulnerable indigenous community members who otherwise are scared to talk to the government, but they are looking at children walking into government offices, challenging data, challenging questions, and they have been supported to do the same. And what we've also seen in a way is that there has been a paradigm shift in the way the local elected governments are even reacting to these children. You're all very welcome to see the project on the ground, but this has been the work of almost 2 decades in terms of what started as a pilot has now moved into a scale, and in every local government of my state, that is about 6,200 places, all the local governments have to consult children. All the local governments have to report back to children on what they have done. So our groundwork has become part of policy and become part of legislation. And what we have continued to see is that children do struggle in terms of access to information, and they do struggle in terms of receiving non-stigmatized support. I'm now talking of the entire state, not just where we work. And that there are not enough mechanisms. Even when they want to speak, where should they go? Who will hear them? Who will be accountable to them? And the biggest problem in this sector for us has been the opposition in terms of the lobbies they have to confront. Because there is a lot of money in liquor, in alcohol, in substance, there's a lot of threat. And they really, our children don't have the means to actually fight large lobbies. I mean, people here have been presenting all at the UN level, and to think that if we are struggling at the UN level to address these issues, imagine our children from our communities. And in terms of our own role, there is a tremendous role for us to do, not just in terms of building awareness, but also understanding the multiple realities of children, their personhoods, and understanding what working with them actually means, understanding their aspirations, creating spaces for them, and at the higher levels coming together like this and trying to find the larger battles so that their smaller battles can be won. And the last slide is that, this is something I believe very strongly, and this is something children has proved beyond doubt, that you don't have to be old, to be wise. And what we've also learned is that you don't have to be old to be resilient, and you don't have to be old to be the change that you want to see around all of you. So thank you very much for this opportunity. A pleasure to be here.
Now for this excellent presentation. I think this light is too much, you find it difficult, this light is focusing on the eyes directly, that one which is coming from that part, some technical thing, okay. So, shall we go to the next presentation? Or you want to stand up for a minute, like always Joseph tend to do, and I always interested. Why not stand for a second, for a minute? Okay? Okay, a bit relax. Okay, let us say together, children matter. Children matter. Children matter. Okay, thank you. Okay, next. I think the minister will be late, You just give a hint, because we are not going to be for the ministers, we are for the children now. Okay. Next, another excellent person whom I know for so many years, Ms. Sumnima Tuladhar. She is the Executive Director of CWIN, Nepal, and she is one of the pioneer child rights defenders in Nepal. She has extensive experience in child protection issues, child sexual abuse and commercial sexual exploitation of children, street children, trafficking in women and children, children in substance use, child participation, and children in armed conflict. She is the founding member of CWIN Nepal and currently serves as its executive director. Sumnima is the national coordinator of Nepal Alcohol Policy Alliance and is a steering committee member of the Safer Initiative in Nepal. Now it's up to you, Sumnima.
short, so I might stand here. Thank you. And thank you, Kavita, for your presentation. And see what a coincidence. Her title of the presentation was For Children with Children. And it's been our tagline forever. We are 35 years old. Which one? So I'll be presenting on drug policy advocacy involving children in Nepal, and it'll be easier for me because Kavita has explained in detail how children's decisions matter and how they can be taken seriously even at the policy level. So according to the Nepal Narcotic Bureau, more children are affected by drug use, and it further states that 54.5% of drug users are below the age of 25 years in Nepal. That's why we are worried. That's why we work so closely with them. So children see it as drug use as a complex issue. It's not only a personal issue for them. It's health issues, mental health issue, and what they have identified as issues surrounding them is personal, which accounts to psychosocial issues, low self-esteem, deprivation of all kinds, external influences, and relationships. And then it also intersects with family issues, where economic status matters, where family disintegration and unsafe migration matters, and where domestic violence prevails. And then it extends up to the social level, where social exclusion of marginalized communities, stigmatization of people who are doing drugs or who are associated with any other marginalized communities, peer group pressure matters. So all these, factors actually intersect, and that's how they see these issues. And they also have identified that external, factors also matter. Availability matters. Online grooming nowadays matters, and it's happening in Nepal. We are also working on very many issues on child protection, including online child sexual exploitation. And from the research that we've done in 2020 on national research on sexual exploitation of children online, children have identified that they have been groomed by predators online, not only for sexual exploitation, but for doing drugs, and they enticed young people, through drug use. And then exploitative situations, the external factors which are beyond their control matters. Then the impact is huge. On education, I do not need to repeat this. I think so many other presenters have excellently outlined these. So the accessibility is a huge issue, and we were concentrating our fieldwork during the COVID times when the lockdowns were happening, strict lockdowns were enforced around the country. We were also working directly with street connected children. We went there and all kinds of drugs were available. We had to rescue few street connected youth from the situations where they were almost dying. They didn't have anything to use. They didn't have access to the, free food packages provided by organizations or governments, but they had IV drug use, drugs available all around them. So that is a huge problem, and as Shakya said, that they are definitely a big target for everybody, and then it is easy to target this group of young people. So I'll now talk about some positive aspects where children, we have worked very closely with hundreds of thousands of children, engaging them in policy work and national drug policy work as well. We do similar works with children on other topics, but also on alcohol and drug issues. So they have contributed to almost all policies that we now have in Nepal, which are much more progressive than maybe some policies in India, Sri Lanka, or maybe some other worlds, because you know what? In the constitution of Nepal, child rights is mentioned under the fundamental rights section, and child participation is acknowledged in our constitution. And you know what? That took us to travel to 68 districts, meeting 1 million children directly, bringing their thumbprints to the President of Nepal, to the Speaker of the Constituent Assembly, and that's how they claimed their right under the fundamental right in the Constitution of Nepal. So that kind of, powerful participation children in Nepal have displayed. We are just too proud. Yes. So their associations are growing, and we even have child-friendly local governance system, which Kavita also, I think, evaluated. It has now become a mandatory, system for all the local governments in Nepal to consider children's role in governance. There are several problems, but then at least we have that foundation in Nepal. And when it comes to drugs policies, we have policies in place, but the policies that we had earlier were kind of very, some regressive and not progressive at all. But the newest policy that we have is the National Drug Strategy, which was formulated in 2020, and that has, a pronounced role of children's clubs in prevention. And it has specifically pronounced prevention work, working with schools and communities, and through the curriculum. And this also has a lot of inputs from children, and it's also maybe because we are flourishing democracy. Should I say that? Maybe yes or no? Still struggling with human rights standards, etc. But when it comes to child rights, for sure, we have now so many local governments, and we had local elections a year ago, and we will be having new parliament elections on the 20th of November. So a lot of opportunities, because we are decentralizing as a nation, and then because we have systems or mechanisms in place like child-friendly local governments, where the ward levels should have children participating in at least few meetings when they are talking about children. So these structures in place, because we are a newer federal system, is actually helping us having that foundation for children to directly participate. And even during the lockdown, we, as an organization, CWIN, we are a pioneer child rights organization with our work in all 7 provinces of Nepal. We were able to connect to several thousand children through online platform. We were providing them with mobile top-up money, and then we were having life skills training. We were having psychosocial first aid training, and we were able to have them developed as peer educators, even to provide mental health support. Okay, then see, child participation is wonderfully working in Nepal. There are several challenges, but one thing cannot be denied is that now children have found a voice and they can't be silenced. And to have, the aspect of the role of child clubs mentioned in the National Drugs Strategy is an achievement in itself, which is actually claimed by the children themselves. And so children do have a say. We don't have to say more, I think. But there are emerging issues even within the, prevention of drugs, engaging with children, because they have identified many emerging issues which are still neglected by the policies, by the strategies on drugs or in child rights framework. So they still demand that their concerns, like how online grooming is happening, and we still do not have online protection law, or we do not have cyber law that protects children from harm, from grooming. It's not mentioned in our law. So all these intersectionality issues are still yet to be, addressed, and children are demanding that their concerns are addressed and that the political parties actually still provide them with a platform to listen to their voices. Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation and highlighting how the child empowerment was practical in Nepal. Now, not for the last but not for the least, Dr. Arun Kandasamy, who is the Professor of Psychiatry, Center for Addiction Medicine at NIMHANS. His areas of specialization are behavioral addiction, vulnerabilities and youth mental health, psychosocial interventions in addictive disorders, cause and outcome in addiction, and physician and mental health. He has published over 15 national and international journal articles and 20 book chapters. He is a recipient of several awards, which include the Tilak Vinkoba Rao Gold Medal in Psychiatry, Fellow of Ramachandra and Murthy Foundation of Mental Health and Neurosciences, Fellowship of Young Asian Psychiatrists by the Asian Federation of Psychiatric Association. Here we have Dr. Arun Kandasamy.
I don't know whether it is luck or unluck. I am coming as the last presenter and I've been asked to finish it faster. I'll see if I can go faster and then we can have discussions off the podium. At the outset, I thank the organizers for inviting me for this very, very informative and very passionate conference per se. And another thanks to understand the need of these stakeholders and including them as a part of this conference itself, because most of this time the fact of involving the youth or young people into policy making or service delivery is much of a lip service. It's very heartening to see that happening over here. This is my alma mater of 70 years of academics, service delivery and research. I had two parts of presentation. Let me see how much I can present within this. I'll continue until the slides come in. So what I was wanting to present was there was, when I listened to the first presentation or second presentation, there was a question which came up, what is the status in India? Where are we as such? So I thought I'll add some of the data from our center. This is something around 26,000 or almost 28,000 adults. When we looked at their profile and compared that with the adolescents, this includes both adults and adolescents, what we could see was alcohol predominantly being present in both the groups, but what we had seen as cannabis, opioids and other stuffs had been more commonly used in the younger population than alcohol as such in the adult. This also I'll try and skip it. Net, what is seen over here is among this adult group, almost around 64% of them have developed use of substances in adolescence itself, and almost around 40% of them have developed dependence, addiction in adolescence itself. So obviously many adolescents, drug users seek treatment later because the average age of consultation with us is 38, so it takes so long for them to reach out to the setting, but they've started having their substance use very early. And if you look at the complications, most of it are relatively less when compared to adults, but the deliberate self-harm attempts and the suicidal attempts are very, very high in this group, the younger group. And also, if you look at the other complications and consequences, they are on par with the adult group also, right, in different dimensions of their life: legal, violence, family tension, occupational issues. Almost around 50% of them are dropouts from the schools, and they are not doing anything at home. This, again, as expected, since the usage of stuffs were only for a smaller period, there are physical consequences happening, but not predominantly as high as the adult group. And if you look at the comorbidities, mood disorders are very, very commonly noted in the younger group, and this becomes one of the, it can be caused, it's a chicken and egg story over here. It could be mood disorder contributing to substance use, and substance use disorder contributing mood. It's always a confusion in the this I talked about. In the morning also, we had the discussion of how family history contribute towards substance use disorder as such. And you can see 70% of the adolescents who present to us have a family history of addiction. Whether you want to consider that as a biological vulnerability or psychosocial vulnerability, it comes from both sides, so they are vulnerable as such. And again, in the adult group also, around 40% of them had family history of addiction also. And what is more important and interesting to look at is majority of them, almost around 2/3 of them, do have temperamental difficulties. It could be the anger or the distress turning outside, or the anger or distress turning inside, like externalizing or internalizing properties are also seen in these group of people. So adolescent treatment seekers belong to a high risk category as such. And when it comes for service seeking, once they come to us, majority of them are denial in their about their substance use itself. Compared to adult group, most of them, when they land up with us, they were in ambivalence. But in the adolescent groups, whenever they come to us, majority of them are denying their substance use itself. So they are a different profile of people who come to us, and the address of the problem also had to be different. So this is in a nutshell about the status of drug use in a clinic, although we do get people all around the country, so in a way it is a representative sample of the whole country per se. Yeah. The second part of my presentation is to give my understanding about what we consider as addiction. We consider addiction as like this. There is a revolver over here. It's not loaded. Here the chambers are loaded, right? Even if the chambers are loaded, there's not going to be any kind of shooting is possible over here. The trigger has to be pulled. The chambers getting loaded are the biological vulnerabilities, and the trigger is from the psychosocial vulnerability coming in, like environmental and psychosocial vulnerability. When they both combine together, they get manifested as the addictive behaviors and the expression of addictive behaviors. We work with this concept in our mind. So majority of our understanding and our evaluation of addiction also goes in this way. Whenever we see a person, we look at what is the vulnerability this person had come up with. On the biological side, or on the psychosocial side, or the environmental side, what kind of vulnerabilities they come with. On the biological side, usually two. One is the family history positivity, two is the temperamental difficulties. These to be considered as biological vulnerabilities. On the other side, there are in the environmental vulnerabilities, developmental stressors, parenting related issues, and adverse events which happens to them. All of them constitute the environmental psychosocial vulnerabilities. Now, this alone makes them vulnerable, but not necessarily that they will get an expression of addiction at a certain point of time. When that gets meeting with some kind of antecedent, it could be dropout from the school, or meeting some peer who could be contributing towards the substance use, or there is a break in love affair, or any such thing. That, when combined with this vulnerability, results in what is the pathology per se, which is the addictive behaviors. And there are other high-risk behavior also like They get into adolescent pregnancies, they get into unsafe sexual practices, and heavy driving, rash, lots and lots of violence, aggression, all those things can come up as psychopathology per se, and comorbidity of mental illnesses also are seen in them. And this alone usually doesn't present to us. What presents to us is that they have dropped off from the school, or they had certain consequences on the legal side, academic side, or on the social side, family side, then they present to us. So we, as a center, we usually look at cases in this manner. So vulnerabilities attached with the antecedents, proximal antecedents, resulting in a certain kind of psychopathology, and that psychopathology resulting in the consequences. This is how we understand. When it comes to treatment, we go on the opposite side. We have to treat. Yeah, I'll stop at this slide. So treating the consequences come first. Majority of the time it is about medical. The intoxication or the withdrawal symptoms or overdose has to be treated first, and the other consequences could be, the social consequences could be treated accordingly. And then comes the psychopathology treatment per se, and the last comes the vulnerability message. So this is even important for people who are already having addiction. And when it comes to prevention, we are looking at treating the vulnerability alone to the majority of the audience. But even in people who are addicted already, we need to approach the treatment in this format. So this is how we complete a treatment profile per se. So for want of thing, I'll just skip on all the slides. I just want to present this alone. So it's not that the important thing in science is not so much to obtain new facts as to discover new ways of thinking about them. So there are many of the facts have been already there. There are interventions which have been already being delivered. But what is more important is to apply to our client, our community, and see how it could be a wholesome intervention package for our people per se. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Arun, especially for highlighting the alarming situation in Bangalore while looking into the treatment seekers' figures. So, will there be time for one or two pressing questions? Yes or no? So, very sorry. Because I know it's a very difficult time, especially as a moderator, I was finding it difficult to say no to people. And I know everybody has got a lot of questions and a lot of things to discuss. And of course, we are here for the next 2 days, and there is a lot of opportunities for us to discuss in detail. So a big thanks to the panelists. You have done a wonderful job. And thanks to the organizers, thanks to those, especially a big hi and thanks to all the online viewers. Thanks a lot for your patient listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson and all the panelists. We have some changes again. According to the agenda, the journal release and the honoring of our international guests was to take place in the presence of the minister. Unfortunately, the minister is unable to make it with us today. So we are continuing with our program. For that, I invite Mr. Raja Shanmugam from our Board of Advisory to anchor the inaugural.
Don't need it. Yeah. Good evening. We know we are living in unusual times when you are expected to come at the end of the day and welcome the guests for the program. Right? I'm supposed to be in the welcome address for the inaugural ceremony of this session. as the last session of the day. Unusual times. But yes, I mean, there's still some things that need to be done, and we will do that. What we will do now is we will invite Amy and Marco onto the stage. As our partner invitees to be felicitated. The ramp is here. And I would also like to invite our presidential address person, Mrs. Kumari Shibulal, onto the stage. So we will have I'm not going to welcome everybody all over again. I'm sure you all felt very welcome during the day. If at all there's one group of people who I would like to specifically welcome, who have not been mentioned till now, is the media. I would like to really welcome the press, not just to take this message out to the world, not just to amplify this message, which is anyway what you do, but also as a partner to our journey. You have eyes that see what most of us don't see. You have ears which see what most of us don't hear. I would like you to inform us, alert us, and help us to be more effective in this journey. If that's one thing you can help us to do, it'll be wonderful. That's my welcome message to the media. So the rest of the program is, I will introduce Mrs. Shibulal, and she will speak, and then we will have the release of the journal and a very small felicitation of our invited overseas partners, who will also speak for a short while, and then we will end. There's a thank you note from CC. Okay. So let me introduce, the others are all been introduced, right? So I don't have to repeat the introduction. Thank you. Mrs. Kumari Shibulal has, and along with her husband Shibulal, has been the patron for the project VENDA from day one. I think the conversation that Diana had with Shibulal, I think in an airport, was possibly the trigger for this whole thing to kick off. Otherwise, Fourth Way Foundation was doing inclusive education program out in Karnataka on the project Nanayakkara. So, sometimes serendipity plays a huge role in how these things fashion. Not only did they trigger this off, but they have been a constant financial supporter for this program till today, from the time we started. They have been the most critical funding agency also through their philanthropies to make this program continue and grow. So thank you again on behalf of Project VENDA. Mrs. Shibulal, Kumari Shibulal, is a founder patron of Sarojini Damodaran Foundation and the Advaita Foundation. Together, through the love of the children, they have sponsored more than 5,000 children's education through the scholarships, and also through their Ankur program, they have provided residential education for 123 students in the Samhita Academy. May I invite Kumari to present your presidential address?
Actually, it is good morning became good afternoon, and I was waiting, and now it is good evening. So, I feel very privileged to be part of this forum, Children Matter, advocating children's right to be drug-free and doing noble work in the service of humanity. Just as the right to education is enshrined in our Constitution for every child, internationally adopted Convention on the Rights of the Child require member states to ensure that the children have a right to a drug-free childhood. It is heartening to see members from 60 countries have made their presence here to address this growing menace of substance abuse. The drug supply chain imperils children at each stage, from production to use. Children are harmed through drug use, parental drug dependence, drug-related violence, exploitation in trafficking, and a range of other ways. Simply saying that children have the right to drugs-free environment does not solve the problem. What matters is what we as a society does to guarantee that right. Unlike many other areas of child rights, implementing Article 33 requires action in both legal and policy area. It also needs participation of all stakeholders. As a mother and grandmother myself, I can truly empathize with the feeling of anxiety and hopelessness when our children tread on the wrong path. Most parents are handicapped when it comes to dealing with tough situations. Efforts like these provide professional guidance and support for parents and on how to handle such situations. The Kerala model, or Project VENDA, has been working on and how substance abuse is impacting children and their choices on healthy lifestyle. The Fourth Way Foundation has been doing stellar work in this region. As the state government was working on a vision document for 2030 on de-addiction, Diana and her team at Project VENDA took it as a challenge to develop a working model to implement a peer lead prevention program. The success of the program is that it found immediate acceptance among the target group. It is their passion for their work and a comprehensive approach that has helped them achieve success in a field which many find daunting. The fact that her work was recognized by the UN and the WFAD and the UNODC decided to hold a conference in 2019, and now in 2022, here speaks for itself. I'm proud to support their efforts in whatever way I can. Three things come to my mind that are essential in this fight against drugs. Our first is awareness. School authorities need to create awareness as part of the curriculum so that prevention, identification, and intervention can happen. Many schools have informal sessions and talks to apprise children about the dangers of substance abuse, but this is not enough. Social enterprise can play a big role in creating awareness. Second, regulatory framework should be deterrent. Just like the recent increase in traffic penalties has encouraged or rather forced compliance, there should be stricter penalties for peddling drugs and more so if it is sold to minors. Third, the community needs to be more aware. Parents should be educated on how to detect telltale signs of substance abuse, importance of emotional support to wean children away from addictions. We need to make a safe environment for our children in our community centers. Churches and temples did it in the past. We need to revive such support system. For any campaign against substance abuse to be successful, it is imperative that there is a multi-pronged approach involving all stakeholders. This entails the government machinery, the police, the civil society, parents, schools and colleges, students and victims. Ensuring everyone is on board helps plug any loopholes there may be. Once again, I would like to thank Diana and the team of organizers for having me here. More power to you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we have a traditional way of felicitating our visitors. You will find out. It's called a ponnada. Right? And I request Shalini Amy? Since Mrs. Shibalal also needs to go to the airport, we will do the journal release, so there is no tension that she needs to sit on pins and needles wondering why we are talking, what we are talking. Right? Thank you, Shalini, for putting up with all this confusion. May I now request Marco to say a few words?
So good afternoon, distinguished guests. I would like to, first of all,
say how honored I am to be sitting in that chair with all of you, and also to you participants and what the institutions that you represent, and also a special thanks to my colleague of UNODC, Billy. Thank you. Happy to be again in the event with you. I am actually delighted and honored to be here, and I mentioned this in my intervention first in the morning, but I want also to mention the word that I feel today. So my mother told me, like you, Regina, to express my feelings openly, so I'll express my feelings. I'm going to take the risk to open up my heart and what I'm feeling today to be here. So I feel inspired by you, by all of you, by the previous speakers, and especially because I see people, persons committed to translate policy into action, a vision into your own communities, to the children that we inspire to have a different type of citizenship. And I think it's this a privilege to partner World Federation Against Drugs with the Fourth Wave Foundation and the Project VENDA on inspiring people and persons to live a different life, and life which is more meaningful to their own communities. Allow me also to express on the behalf of His Excellency, the Executive Director of United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, her willingness to continue to build this partnership, because it's part of the strategic priorities of United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, 21-25, to continue to build strategic partnerships. I also, another thing that you know, I like also quotes, and I'm a very abiding citizen and employee of United Nations. So I selected the quote of the UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, when he said, "We need to recognize as United Nations that we don't work alone, and we need to be humble enough to identify strategic partners. Also recognizing our convening power as United Nations to put the partners together." So I think this partnership with all of you represents the vision of the Secretary General to be close to people, close with partners that make a change. So before, obviously, I finish, I would like also to emphasize this is the beginning of my journey as regional representative, and also hope this journey is also built with solid partnerships with institutions and the foundations that you represent, and especially with all of you, because you are a driving force of the United Nations to translate policy into action. So hopefully I count on you, and you count on us to continue this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco, for that hopeful message. May I now invite Amy.
Hello again. I know it's toward the end of the day, and we had a lot of great information on who we are as WFAD, but as a quick reminder, we are a collaborative organization with many NGOs. I think Regina said around 360 members, 380 members. We are growing quickly. And I want to take this opportunity. I have a speech, but I'm not reading it. I left my glasses at the table. But I also want to say that, you know, as we're growing and as we're building, I really want to take this opportunity to thank some of our founding board members are here, and also our past president, Espern. You know, we have this solid foundation underneath us because of the work that you guys did. And as Regina stated earlier, we're only as good as our membership, which makes us amazing because we have such great partners like the Fourth Wave Foundation. And you heard from Cece all the wonderful work that they're doing, and it really is just an honor for us to be able to collaborate and to see those efforts, and we're just so humbled to be here and to be part of that. So I'm just very grateful for that, and I'm anxious to see how else we can work in other different parts of the globe with all of you guys. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy. I cannot be the first person to talk in the day and the last person to talk on the day. So I leave that to CC to do that.
Thank you, Raja. My job is simple. I just want to offer a few words of thanks for all those up here on the dais and for everyone. So let me start with Kumari ma'am. Ma'am, thank you for the support, encouragement, and trust you have put in us over the last many years. It is very, very encouraging. We had come here a few weeks back to check the venue and to start the arrangements. Ma'am happened to be here in this auditorium for some other function, so she was meeting some of her friends upstairs, and she made it a point to come down, meet the staff members, inquire how they are. So the relationship with ma'am is not just a relationship where somebody gives some money and then it's over there, but ma'am has taken it personally to find out how things are going on, inquire personally about the people who are working with us. So thank you, ma'am, for the support, and we always say thank you for trusting us with what we are doing. Thank you, ma'am. You will meet Shivular sir on the third day, and there's a beautiful story associated with it, so we will hear that also. I don't want to break the suspense now, so ma'am, carry our regards to. Ma'am has to be back in Bangalore today, and both of them are actually juggling their time, so they can be here with us on 2 days. So ma'am is going back, and sir will join us on the last day. Marco, there are a lot of firsts, maybe with Project VENDA. During the Arfad conference, I don't know if you remember, that was the first official function of the governor of Kerala. He had come to visit us as the first official function, and here you are, Marco, representing UN, and your first official function with maybe all of us sitting together. So thank you, Marco, for coming. Thank you for taking your time. And like you said, this relationship that we have started, hopefully we will continue. Amy, thank you for being with us, for trusting us. She has so many organizations and leading so many organizations, and she is coming from another conference. We know you have put in this effort, so thank you for being with us. Shalini, no words, okay? And last is to Raja sir. Our journey with Raja sir is over a decade long. And we still remember in 2011 when we had a conference in Bangalore where we had around 6,000 odd schools, 300 corporates, and some 50 NGOs coming together. We organized that conference without a single penny. We had not raised a penny, and after the program, everybody left. Raja waited for the last person to leave, and then he walks up to us and asks us this simple question: how did you manage? What are you doing? And there the journey started. Even today he's asking the same question, okay? Some time back I was sitting there and said, how are the finances? What is the situation? I said, story is not very different. I'll brief you after some time. So Raja, thank you for all the encouragement. He on and off talks to many of our employees. He trains many of them. So thank you for being with us, for journeying with us. And we always say thank you for being that wonderful person you are. Thank you, Raja. And to all of you, we have had the first day, and it was a beautiful day. For all those watching us online, I think around 50 of them are on Zoom and around 100 on YouTube. So thank you for this beautiful day. Shalini will tell you how the day ends, but it was a beautiful journey together. We have started. We have 2 more days of lot of hard work and deliberations and discussions, but thank you for being here, and see you again. Thank you.
Just a few announcements before we leave. There is a bus that will leave at 5:30, and the guests staying at Apollo de Moro, your bus is bus number 3. The other bus will take the guests who are staying at Vivanta to your hotel. And tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, the bus will arrive at Apollo de Moro. So please see that you all are ready to leave on that 8 o'clock bus, because the same bus has to come to Vivanta at 8:15, and the delegates staying at Vivanta should be ready to board the bus by 8:15. And now we will break for tea, and that will be the end of the day today. Is there any more? Okay. that is it. So have a good day, and for the guests who are staying here, dinner will be served here at 7:30. Thank you.